James Slim O'Connor and Malik Red Thompson started as nothing more than small-time street dealers in Liverpool's forgotten corners. But in just a few years, they built one of the most dangerous cocaine empires the UK has ever seen. Ruthless, unstoppable, and shrouded in mystery. This is the story of how two desperate men became the masterminds behind the Liverpool Cartel, changing the face of crime forever. In the heart of Liverpool's toughest neighborhoods, life was a daily struggle. The city's docks, once bustling with trade and promise, had fallen into decline. Factories closed, jobs disappeared, and hope became a scarce commodity. It was in this bleak landscape that a small group of young men found themselves drawn into the world of petty crime. With few opportunities available, selling drugs on street corners seemed like the easiest way to survive. They started small, mostly cannabis and heroin, dealing just enough to get by. The streets were harsh and dangerous, but the promise of quick money was too strong to resist. The dealers operated in the shadows, keeping their heads down and avoiding trouble with both the police and rival gangs. For a while their lives were a cycle of small deals, dodging the law, and fighting off threats from other criminals. They had no grand plan, no vision beyond the next day's earnings. Despite the constant danger, these early days were a training ground. They learned who to trust, how to spot informants, and the importance of loyalty. The streets demanded respect, and they earned it through toughness and street smarts. Slowly, word spread about their reliability and willingness to take risks. Small-time dealers began to look up to them, and soon, the group's influence grew beyond their immediate neighborhood. But their ambitions were still limited by their means. Cocaine, the drug that promised far greater profits, was out of reach. The cartel's members had no contacts for importing the drug and lacked the resources to make a move. Still, they kept their eyes open, watching the bigger players in the UK's drug trade, learning from their mistakes. Unbeknownst to them, their fortunes were about to change. A chance encounter with a mysterious figure, one who moved in the shadows between Liverpool and Europe, would open the door to a new world. This meeting marked the beginning of a transformation that would take them from small-time street dealers to one of the most powerful cocaine cartels in the country. The streets of Liverpool would never be the same again. Everything changed the day the mysterious middleman appeared. He was quiet, calculating, and spoke little about his background. But he brought with him an opportunity the group had only dreamed of. Access to cocaine. Unlike the low-profit drugs they had been selling, cocaine promised enormous returns. The dealers saw a chance to escape their struggling existence and build something far bigger. The first shipment was small, just a few kilograms hidden in a shipment of imported goods. It arrived in the dead of night, smuggled through Liverpool's port with careful precision. The group was nervous but excited. The risk was higher, but so was the reward. As the cocaine hit the streets, demand exploded. The dealers moved quickly, selling out in days and making more money than they had in months. With the profits rolling in, the group began to change. They reinvested in their operation, hiring more trusted people to help with distribution and security. They no longer operated just as street dealers. They started thinking like businessmen. They set up safer supply routes and found new customers beyond their usual neighborhoods. The small-time hustle grew into a sophisticated enterprise. However, success also brought new challenges. The group had to deal with rival gangs, who wanted a share of the lucrative cocaine trade. These gangs weren't interested in making friends. They wanted to take control by any means necessary. Violence flared up, with armed confrontations and retaliations becoming more common. The streets became a battleground, forcing the group to develop tougher tactics and stronger alliances. Meanwhile, law enforcement began to notice the sudden rise in cocaine-related activity. But the cartel was still careful, operating under the radar and avoiding large-scale exposure. Police officers saw isolated incidents, but lacked the evidence to connect the dots. For now, the group remained a step ahead. The middleman continued to supply cocaine shipments, growing more ambitious with each successful delivery. The dealers, once unsure and inexperienced, became confident and ruthless. The dream of escaping poverty was turning into a reality. but the cost was rising. The cartel was evolving fast, and so was the danger that came with power. Liverpool was witnessing the birth of something that would soon shake the entire country's underworld. As the cartel's power grew, so did the tension with rival gangs who controlled different parts of Liverpool. These groups had long dominated the drug trade in their neighborhoods, and they weren't willing to give up their territory without a fight. The sudden success of the cartel's cocaine business threatened their control and profits. What began as verbal threats soon escalated into brutal violence. The streets became battlegrounds. Drive-by shootings, attacks on drug dens, and violent reprisals became a terrifying daily reality for residents. Innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire, and fear spread through the city. The cartel, once a small group trying to survive, now wielded guns and made deadly decisions. Their reputation for ruthlessness grew quickly, deterring some enemies but also attracting more attention from law enforcement. This turf war wasn't just about drugs. It was a fight for respect and power, a struggle to prove who controlled Liverpool's underworld. The cartel's leaders realized that surviving this war would require more than just guns. They needed strategy. They started using intimidation and calculated violence to send clear messages to their rivals. Some gang members were targeted with shocking brutality. Others were offered deals or forced out of their areas. But the rival gangs weren't weak. They fought back fiercely, and the violence spiraled into an all-out war that left many dead or in hiding. The community was caught in the middle, and the streets became dangerous at all hours. Families moved away, businesses shut down, and the city's reputation suffered. Police presence increased, but officers struggled to contain the chaos or gather evidence against the cartel. Amid the conflict, the cartel members grew increasingly paranoid. Trust became scarce, and the fear of betrayal loomed over every decision. Leaders tightened control, and even close allies began to question their loyalty. The violence was taking its toll, but the cartel refused to back down. They believed that victory in this war would cement their place as Liverpool's most powerful criminal force. The stakes were higher than ever, and the battle for control had only just begun. What started as a small-time drug operation was now a violent war zone, setting the stage for even darker and more dangerous chapters ahead. The cartel's rise depended on one critical factor: the ability to get cocaine into Liverpool without being caught. Early on, customs and law enforcement were vigilant, seizing shipments and arresting couriers whenever they found them. It was clear that without a smarter method of smuggling, the cartel's ambitions would be crushed before they could truly take off. That's when they found their secret weapon, a man known only as the smuggler, a quiet but brilliant mastermind with a reputation for evading even the toughest security. The smuggler developed a clever new system that changed everything. Instead of hiding drugs in obvious places, he began concealing cocaine inside everyday items in large commercial shipments. From pallets of fruit to containers of furniture, nothing was off limits. The cocaine was carefully packaged inside hollowed-out goods, sealed tight and disguised as harmless cargo. This method made inspections difficult and time-consuming, and most shipments passed through without a single suspicion. Law enforcement grew frustrated and confused. Despite increased efforts and tighter security, they couldn't find a pattern or catch the shipments. The cartel was moving large quantities of cocaine with almost no risk. This success meant profits soared, and the group had money to expand their reach further than ever before. With more cash on hand, they bribed port officials, police officers, and even some local politicians, ensuring their operation was shielded from many investigations. This new smuggling technique also gave the cartel a strategic advantage over rivals. While other gangs struggled with small shipments and constant raids, the Liverpool Cartel was flooding the streets with cocaine. Their influence grew as users and dealers flocked to them for supply. But success bred confidence, and with it came carelessness. The cartel's expanding empire meant more people knew their secrets, increasing the risk of leaks or betrayal. Despite this, the cartel pressed forward. They invested in better security, technology, and networks, turning their operation into a well-oiled machine. The streets buzzed with talk of their power and wealth, and whispers of the cartel's name spread far beyond Liverpool. The once small-time dealers were now part of a sophisticated drug empire, and the future looked both bright and dangerous. The turning point came when law enforcement decided to take a bold approach. Frustrated by their inability to tend to the cartel's secretive world, they placed an undercover agent deep inside the organization. This agent's mission was dangerous: to gain the cartel's trust, gather evidence from within, and expose their operations without being discovered. For months, the agent lived a double life. Every day was a balancing act between maintaining a convincing criminal persona and collecting crucial information. The agent observed how the cartel operated, the smuggling routes, the key players, the methods of communication, and the ways they avoided police detection. Trust was hard to earn, and one wrong move could mean death. Close calls and near exposures created constant tension. The cartel's leaders were suspicious and quick to punish any signs of betrayal. The agent had to carefully navigate this minefield, providing just enough information to stay in favor while secretly feeding valuable intelligence back to the police. The pressure was immense, and the fear of being unmasked weighed heavily every moment. As the agent gathered more evidence, a picture of the cartel's full operation began to emerge. It wasn't just about drugs anymore. The cartel had grown into a powerful criminal network involved in money laundering, bribery, and violence on an unprecedented scale. The information was detailed and damning, enough to build a strong case for a major crackdown. Yet, even with this breakthrough, uncertainty loomed. The cartel was clever and ruthless, with eyes and ears everywhere. Paranoia spread within the group, causing internal suspicion and reclaim their territory. The police believed they had won a decisive victory, but the cartel's resilience was underestimated. Their network was damaged, but far from destroyed. The lieutenant's betrayal marked a turning point, one that would change the balance of power in Liverpool's underworld and set the stage for the cartel's next, more dangerous phase of growth and violence. The city was still very much a battleground, and the war for control was far from over. After the devastating raids and betrayals, the cartel seemed broken, but from the ashes rose a new leader, one colder and more ruthless than anyone before. Unlike the early founders, this leader was not interested in loyalty or sentiment. His focus was power, control, and expanding the cartel's reach beyond Liverpool. Under his command, the cartel transformed from a street-level gang into a calculated criminal empire. This new leader was a master strategist. He rebuilt the cartel's fractured network with precision, identifying weak points and thinning alliances. Old rivalries were set aside if they served the bigger goal. He used fear and intimidation to silence dissent, punishing betrayal swiftly and publicly. No one was safe from his wrath, and stories of his brutal methods spread fast, keeping both enemies and his own members in line. With fresh capital and a reorganized structure, the cartel expanded operations. They diversified their drug portfolio, moving into synthetic drugs and expanding their cocaine distribution beyond Liverpool to other major cities in the UK. This broader reach made them even more dangerous, giving them influence in markets previously controlled by other criminal groups. The cartel also invested heavily in money laundering schemes. Legitimate businesses became fronts for their illegal profits, making it harder for law enforcement to track their wealth. The group developed a sophisticated web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and fake invoices that hid their true operations behind layers of deception. As the cartel grew, so did its ambitions. They began forging alliances with international crime organizations, connecting Liverpool streets to global drug routes. This international reach made the cartel a key player in the global drug trade, increasing their power and resources exponentially. But with greater power came greater risks. The new leader's aggressive expansion attracted the attention of powerful enemies both within and outside the UK. Political figures, rival gangs, and international law enforcement agencies all saw the cartel as a threat that needed to be stopped. The once small-time group had become a formidable empire, ruthless and sprawling, Their grip on Liverpool tightened, but the dangers surrounding them multiplied. The stage was set for an intense struggle that would decide the cartel's future, and the future of the city itself. As the cartel grew stronger under its new leadership, it began to look beyond Liverpool, forging partnerships that stretched across borders. These alliances connected the cartel to international crime organizations involved in drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and money laundering. Through these connections, the cartel gained access to larger cocaine shipments and more sophisticated methods of distribution. This network transformed them from a local gang into a powerful player on the global stage. The cartel's international partners brought experience and resources that helped expand operations across multiple cities in the UK. This expansion allowed the cartel to control not just cocaine but other lucrative drugs such as heroin, methamphetamines, and synthetic opioids. Their ability to supply a variety of substances made them indispensable to dealers and users alike, strengthening their dominance in the drug market. To protect their growing empire, the cartel invested heavily in technology and security. Encrypted communication devices, burner phones, and coded messages became standard tools. Surveillance systems monitored their properties, and trusted lookouts watched for any sign of police or rival gangs. The cartel also began using cryptocurrency and complex money laundering techniques to hide the flow of cash and avoid detection. Legitimate businesses became vital to their operations. Restaurants, clubs, and import-export companies served as fronts for laundering money and concealing drug shipments. This blurred the lines between the legal and illegal worlds, making it much harder for law enforcement to trace the cartel's activities. The cartel's influence seeped into local politics and law enforcement through bribery and intimidation, creating layers of protection against investigations. Despite this power, cracks began to show. The more the cartel expanded, the harder it became to control every aspect of the operation. Rival factions within the organization started competing for influence. While some international partners grew impatient or suspicious, the sheer scale of the cartel made it vulnerable to mistakes, leaks, and betrayals. Still, the cartel's rise was undeniable. From the streets of Liverpool to the international drug trade, they had built a vast, shadowy empire. But as their reach extended, so did the risks, setting the stage for challenges that would test their survival like never before. In an unexpected turn of events, a former rival gang leader reached out to the cartel with a surprising proposal to join forces. For years, these two groups had clashed violently over territory and control of the drug trade. But now, with law enforcement cracking down harder and competition growing fiercer, both sides saw the value in uniting their resources and power. Reluctantly, the cartel agreed, forming an alliance that shocked Liverpool's criminal underworld. This merger created a criminal powerhouse unlike anything the UK had seen before. Combining their networks, manpower, and resources, the new coalition controlled vast areas of Liverpool and extended their influence into other cities. They coordinated drug shipments more efficiently, shared intelligence, and eliminated smaller raver gangs together. The combined strength made them almost unstoppable. However, blending two rival groups was far from easy. Deep-seated grudges and old betrayals simmered beneath the surface. Trust was fragile, and the fear of betrayal grew. Leaders from both sides kept a close eye on each other, wary of any sign of disloyalty. Tensions occasionally flared into violence, reminding everyone that old wounds were not easily healed. Despite internal struggles, the alliance allowed the cartel to dominate the UK drug market. Their reach extended from the streets of Liverpool to major cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and London. The cartel's leaders pushed harder than ever to expand their business, taking control of new drug routes and forging relationships with international suppliers. But with increased power came new enemies. Rival gangs who were excluded from the alliance plotted revenge. Law enforcement agencies intensified their efforts, sharing intelligence across borders to dismantle the cartel's growing empire. Political pressure mounted, and the public demanded action against the rising tide of violence and drug abuse. Within the cartel, some members grew restless, ambitions clashed, and some questioned whether the alliance was a sign of strength or a weakness that made them vulnerable. As the cartel reached the peak of its power, cracks appeared in its foundation, cracks that would soon lead to dangerous conflicts and betrayals, threatening to unravel everything they had built. The struggle for control was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. The government launched its most ambitious operation yet, determined to dismantle the cartel once and for all. With years of intelligence gathered from undercover agents, informants, and surveillance, law enforcement agencies across the UK coordinated a massive crackdown. This operation involved hundreds of officers, specialists, and international partners working together to strike at the cartel's core. Simultaneous raids targeted key locations, warehouses, safe houses, and businesses used for money laundering. The cartel's leaders were caught off guard by the scale and precision of the attacks. Many were arrested in dramatic fashion, facing charges that included drug trafficking, conspiracy, and murder. The evidence against them was overwhelming, built from months of careful investigation. The crackdown sent shockwaves through Liverpool. Streets once ruled by the cartel experienced a sudden, if temporary, calm. Residents cautiously hoped the violence and fear might finally be ending. Yet, behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. Some cartel members managed to slip through the cracks, disappearing without a trace before arrests could be made. Rumors spread of secret hideouts and underground escape routes. The trials that followed captivated the nation. High-profile court cases exposed the cartel's brutal methods and vast criminal network. Testimonies from former members and victims painted a chilling picture of the cartel's reign. Sentences were long, and some key figures received life imprisonment. Still, the cartel's true leaders remained elusive. Despite the apparent victory, questions lingered. Was the cartel truly defeated, or merely forced into the shadows? Investigations continued, uncovering signs that the organization was adapting, rebuilding quietly, forming new alliances, and changing tactics. The deep roots they had planted in businesses and communities made them difficult to eradicate completely. The story of the Liverpool Cartel ended, for now, as a cautionary tale of how desperate times and worthless ambition can turn street dealers into a powerful criminal empire. It was a reminder that even the most feared organizations can fall, but often not without leaving behind a legacy that is hard to fully erase. The city of Liverpool, scarred but resilient, continued to watch and wait, knowing the battle against such forces